Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today we are going to fly the latest in VFR simulation. A2A have released their FS2024 native Piper Comanche update, and this one just came out last Christmas, so it kinda went past me for the first bit due to all the lovely airliner releases we had in that time, but here it is. It comes at a price point at about $15 for owners of the 2020 version, and while the 2020 version also works in 2024, the native update has a lot more features added to it, some of which we are going to have a look at today. Also, we are going to have a look at the brand new Navigraph update with VFR charts for pretty much most of Europe, which we are going to use to plan today's flight. But let's go ahead and get started with the Comanche update. Now, the airplane itself just looks as fantastic as it used to look. However, you can see that many native 2024 features, such as the Walkaround mode, has been implemented in the aircraft, and a lot of things like opening the fuel tanks to be able to visually verify the fuel quantity in there, or the ability to operate things like your control surfaces from the outside during your walkaround have been added, making this airplane fully compatible with FS2024's walkaround mode now. So as you can see, you can really operate all of that stuff now. Sometimes the click spots are a little bit annoying, I gotta say, because, for example, here we have the flap click spot, and in order to be able to operate the chocks, I need to actually be in the very front of the aircraft. But over here you can then operate all of that stuff. You can even test the stall warning here if you want to. Now, all of that lovely walk-around stuff has been added to the aircraft. Now let's go ahead and go inside and see what's new over there as well. Do note you can actually walk up the wing over here. I mean, don't do this. Don't do this. But you can. And now we can go ahead and open her up and take a seat in the pilot's seat. Now you will probably notice that a couple of things have changed in the cockpit. Namely, we do have new gauges available, which you can now fit optionally to your aircraft. This is done through the electronic flight pack, which you can now freely move around the cockpit like this, just like you could in the Aerostar, and when you hit the left and the right mouse at the same time on the lower part, you can attach it to the control column, and it actually moves together with your control column, which is quite nice. Now, in the FS2024 EFB, which is basically what you've got on this tablet, you have the A2A Comanche app, and in here you got all the nice things like your speeds and power settings, you got your checklists, you got your controls over here, and I just want to show you a couple of things here. You can see the airplane comes with a lot of different GPS options. You can go for no GPS, you can fit a 530, a 430, a combination of them, and you can of course also fit the GTN 750 Xi and the 650 Xi like that. So that's pretty cool. But here's something that's new, and that's the 1980 style ANOV computer. Now, we will probably deal with this one on a separate video, but just know that it is here. Also new is an option for a multifunction display for both the ADI as well as the HSI. So you got your conventional option over here, and then when you go down into the out of the advanced options, that is what it should look like, and select a compatible GPS option. For example, today we are going to go with the GNS 430. Then you can select your G5 MFDs down here, which are, well, just an electronic representation, but quite nice. We will be using them on today's flight. Now, apart from that, you also have the fuel and payload menu and the maintenance menu, where you can do all that lovely stuff over here that you are used to from your typical A2A aircraft. So that's quite the nice stuff that we can do over here in the tablet. What's also really nice is that this is basically the integration of the default tablet, so that means we can use things like the Navigraph chart app, which now contains JPEG VFR charts. So that way we basically get a full implementation of VFR charts like you would have it in a real-world tablet, and all of that right within the aircraft. So here we got the Rogers Data VFR Charts Europe, which Navigraph now has included in their package, and that way we basically have a full VFR equipment just like we would in the real world when flying our Comanche around the local block. So that's quite the cool stuff. Also note that you have all the flight planning functionalities and everything that comes with the Navigraph suite, which I can really recommend, but more on that in a dedicated VFR navigation video. For now, know that this is all here, and this can all be used inside the Comanche flight deck. So really cool stuff. Now let's go ahead and take her flying around Mainz and just see how the flight dynamics feel, how the aircraft feels, and how we can enjoy this. Now, let's make our life easy. We are just going to go down into the A2A Comanche app, and in here we got all the normal as well as the emergency checklists available right within the flight deck. This is just so cool. Alright, so before engine start checklist. Pre-flight complete. Passengers, well, we just got one flight instructor with us today. Now, this is the default FS2024 Copilot model. I still have it set to airliner, but you can change that in the FS2024 settings, and then you are going to have an appropriate Copilot model in here as well. You can also load passengers back there if you do load them in the fuel and payload menu, but since we are still learning the airplane, we don't want to scare anyone off. I mean, my airliner landings are doing that all the time anyway. Alright, so, before engine start checklist again. Pre-flight complete, passengers briefed, seatbelts secured, control lock removed, parking brake is set, gear switch down, flaps up, radios off, autopilot master, that's hidden back here, is off, avionic master off, all electrical switches are off. Then the circuit breakers are all in, and the beacon is on. And that's our before engine start checklist complete. So let's continue with the engine start checklist. Fuel selectors are set to the main tanks. Mixture, rich, throttle, cracked, prop, full forward, carpet off, master switch on, fuel pump on. Then fuel pressure, very slight, but is there. Okay, fuel pressure checked, fuel pump off, primer 1 through 5 strokes. Let's just do 3 today. 1, 2, 3. And make sure to secure that primer again. Okay, then magnetos. Both propeller area is clear and starter engage. Alright, oil pressure is checked, mixture lean as required. We're just gonna lean a little bit over here, and that's the engine start checklist complete. So let's go for the taxi checklist. Primer locked, avionics master on. Alright, ammeter is checked, radios are on. So, transponder and standby, altimeter. Let's see what's our field elevation today. Mine's elevation 760, and we got 760, 760. Alright, good. So, altimeter set, heading indicator, that's looking good. Let's set the heading back to the runway heading. This is a runway 07 over here. So something like that, 070. Alright, landing gear lamp is green. It's not that easy to see, but it is there. It is green. You will notice when we retract the gear later on. Nav lights not required off. Parking brake release and brakes on initial roll test. That's the taxi checklist complete. Alright then, let's have a very quick look at what we are going to do. Parking up here in Mainz-Finden, runway 07 is active. We'll taxi out via Alpha all the way to the runway. Alright. Then let's also quickly set up our GPS. We have not refilled any fuel. And that's it. Cool. Park and brake released. Let's get going. Brake check. It's good. So the right side is clear, the left side is clear. But look at that, the windows are fogging up a little bit. Well, let's go ahead and turn the cabin heat on. And that should hopefully defog those windows. We can also just open the window for a bit to help it. Outside temperature is about 10 degrees Celsius. So yeah, not surprised that the windows do start fogging up there. What's nice, by the way, is that the windows are fogging up on the side, but since I've just done a couple traffic patterns just to acquaint myself with the aircraft before showing it to you guys, the engine is still hot. And therefore the front windows are actually not fogging up. That heat is radiating from the engines, and yeah, you do see that. That's pretty nice. Really gotta say so. Also, what we can do already is to put our headphones up because who's flying an airplane without headphones? Now, what's really nice, what is available now, I'm not sure if it actually was available in the 2020 Comanche, for sure is in the 2024 Comanche, is that when you activate the ANR over here, the light goes on, and now we actually have an ANR sound set, which is what we would have in the real world when flying an airplane like this. So that's pretty cool stuff. Now, for the purpose of this video, I will turn the ANR off, because I do know that flight simulators like to hear their aircraft. But be aware it is there, and it sounds good. It is a very strong ANR, gotta say that, but it does sound good. Alright, then let's turn us a little bit into the approach for the run-up. And windows are defogged, let's go ahead and close that. Park and brake is set, and here we go. Excellent, well then, let's go ahead and start with the run-up checklist. That's position into wind. Well, we are downwind a little bit, but it's mostly from the front anyway. So, brakes hold, fuel quantity. That's looking good, and that's what we're expecting. Is checked, fuel selectors are on both. Then, mixture as required, rich, throttle for 2000 RPMs. And here's 2000. Alright, magneto, well, engine instruments, all tracked, all looking good. Magnetos, maximum drop 125, maximum difference 50. So then, right magneto, we're losing 125, both. Left magneto, that's within limits, and back to both. Okay, propeller cycle 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Alright, copy check. Let's pull that, observe a drop in the RPMs, and then we're closing it again, and the RPMs are going back up. And that's the run-up checklist complete. So let's return our throttle to 1000 RPMs here, while we finish up with the rest of the procedure. Okay, so before takeoff checklist, flight controls. This is what I meant with the tablet just sticking to them. That's so nice, just like in the real plane. So, free and correct, elevator trim, it's neutral. Then rudder trim is actually not installed on this aircraft, not sure where that comes from. Door is closed, and up here is also latched. Alright, flaps as desired. We can just let's use the first notch of flaps here. No, my connection is not unstable. Thank you. Alright, so flaps set as desired. Fuel selectors are going to stay on full. Fuel pump is on. So, mixture full rich. Prop full forward. Carb heat off. Engine gauges checked. Pitot heat, we are certainly gonna turn that on. Strobe lights on, landing lights as required. Yeah, tell you what, we will be flying near the airport all the time today, so let's turn those on as well, and that's the before takeoff checklist complete. So just a quick look over the takeoff checklist: throttle full open, speed alive, engine gauge is checked, rotate at 85, positive climb verify, gear up, flaps up, speed for the best rated climb 105 miles an hour, and emergency landing area verify. So emergency landing area basically straight ahead, a slight bit to the left turn, the right side is all forest, we don't want to go into the trees. Alright, and that's that. Now a little something from the aircraft tab here as well for the takeoff. Rotate VR at 85 miles an hour at maximum takeoff weight. Begin rotation earlier at lower weight or with flaps if the aircraft becomes light on the main gear. And you really do feel it become light on the main gear. We'll observe that in a few moments during the takeoff roll. That's why I went for the flaps in the first setting. And then we just rotate a bit earlier than 85. For the climb, 24 manifold, 24 RPMs. Best angle of climb, 84 miles. Best rate, 105. Normal climb, 120. We'll be using 120 after we leave the traffic pattern, because we do want to go a little bit to the south, do some air work, come back, and then we'll be doing a couple of traffic patterns to see how the aircraft takes off and lands. Alright, and that's basically everything. So with that, we have read through the takeoff checklist. Let's open up the climb checklist, but most importantly, let's bring up our VFR approach chart for mines. We're taking off on 07, pretty early right-hand turn to stay over the forest, and then we are going to leave the pattern down here on the edge of the forest southbound. What's worth mentioning is the general airspace that we will be flying in from the en route chart. Down here we can see it's Class Charlie airspace from 3,500 feet upwards, so we will not climb above 3,500. MSA 2.8, however we will be visual, so we can probably fly a bit lower than that as well. Okay, cool. And then generally try not to fly to the east of the airfield, because that's where you've got first Wiesbaden and then Frankfurt airspace. Okay, cool. So we're leaving southbound then. Alright, are you ready to go? Then let's go ahead and release that park and brake. The approach area is clear, the runway is clear. Let's get going. Down here everything's set. Yeah, checklist is completed. Looking good. Alright, runway 07 is confirmed, and then we're ready to go. So, takeoff. Takeoff power set. Wind from the right. And here you can feel the airplane get light on the wheels, so rotate. Positive climb, tap the brakes. Insufficient runway for landing, gear up. So start on the right hand turn to stay over the forest, and 400 AGL, flaps up. Then we can accelerate to 120 knots, and we will be climbing out to the south. So approaching 1000 AGL, set climb thrust, 2424. Here's 24 inches, and here's 2400 RPMs. Alright, and then we're leaving to the south. 120 knots, nicely established in the climb. I gotta say, I really do like the feeling of the airplane. It's very stable in the air. And now we just gotta make sure that we don't drift into the Frankfurt airspace, which is located right over there. Frankfurt Airport. And then we will be heading out to the south to find a little hole in the clouds. where we can do a bit of air work. The prop was a little unstable there. Well, this is looking better. Alright, I do see a couple of clouds coming up ahead, so let's actually maintain 2500 over here. Okay, so the gear is up, the flaps is up, we are accelerating past 125, which is the limiting speed for those. Then let's nicely establish ourselves here at this altitude and start gaining a little bit of airspeed. You might be noticing that the speed indicated over here is different than the speed indicated over here. That's because you do see miles an hour over here, statute miles that is, and on the right hand side you have knots. In this little window in here you have knots on the speed indicator as well. But that is something to be aware of, because you might be asking yourself, like, what's that airplane doing? Well, that's what it's doing. It does make sense when you think about it. After all, A2A are simulating the airplane to be pretty much your average owned airplane or your average club airplane, and yeah, that's exactly what these aircraft look like. They're typically not those nice and shiny new aircraft from the manufacturer that most flight sim add-on developers are developing, but they're typically, you know, there's a little bit of a mess of everything mashed up together, and I think A2A really gave it that feeling very, very nicely. Alright, so we are basically operating at maximum continuous thrust right now, and, well, look at that, 150 knots, close to 155. This is a fast airplane. Alright then, let's just quickly demonstrate the autopilot of this aircraft. So you do have the master switch up here. Now it's on in wings level, and then you got the altitude hold button in the back over here, and now it's just maintaining that altitude. If you wanted to follow your actual heading, then let's first of all set that heading over here, something like 190, I'd say. So heading 190 selected, press that thing again, and now we're in heading mode. Now, what's quite nice is that with this version of the aircraft, at least I think they didn't have that in the past version, you have that switch to actually couple the autopilot to your GPS navigation. Let's have a look at how to do that. So first of all, we do need a GPS destination, of course. So let's just set Mannheim over here, Echo Delta Foxtrot Mike, which is somewhere down to the south. Alright, now simply press the GPS switch while you're in heading mode, and you can see now the airplane is going to follow the GPS course that we have selected up here. That way you can nicely navigate via your GPS and follow a GPS routing. I gotta say, I do like that. And looks like we are approaching a couple of clouds over here, so let's just disconnect that autopilot here for a moment and descend below the clouds. Hopefully 2,000 feet is going to be okay. Remember, no pressure cabin, so no more than 1,000 feet a minute over here. Does look a little turbulent, but it's not too bad, so if we just enter the caution band on the airspeed slightly, that is fine with me. Alright then. Yep, here is that hole that we've been looking for. 2,000 feet isn't exactly the highest, but it'll have to do, since, well, that's what the weather is today. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of steep turns left and right and that kind of stuff. So we're starting right on the present heading. So let's set that 147, here it is. Okay, and then we'll start with a steep turn left and a steep turn right. Flying very fast, so the rudder is actually very sensitive here. Alright, let's try and maintain that altitude. So 45 degrees turn to the left, and thereafter it's going to be a 45-degree turn to the right. Something that I do really like about these steep turns is that they just practice your instrument scan, because you gotta have your speed in mind, you gotta have your altitude, you gotta have your attitude, your bank angle, and ultimately also your heading, because at the end of the day you do want to roll out precisely. And I gotta say that the electronic flight instruments provided here in the Comanche are really good for that. You just have a compact display of everything needed right up here in front of you, and well, what else could you be asking for? Now the arrows reach in target heading, let's roll out, and let's do the same thing into the other side. So on the right hand turn here, again try not to climb away. As always, we want to maintain our altitude within 100 feet. So let's return to the 2000. And here we go. So, pretty easy stuff. But I can very much recommend you guys to do this type of training as well when you acquaint yourself with the aircraft, because that is really how you get fluent in the instrument scan. And ultimately, when you're doing the touch and go training later on, that is where you do need that instrument scan. Alright, and we're reaching the target heading, but I tell you what, let's go ahead and keep turning away from those clouds here. So I'll just keep the steep turn going for a bit, so that we are not going to enter any clouds when we do our stalls in a few moments. Okay, let's not climb away. Then I am already reducing the manifold pressure for a bit. Right, I think this is probably the best weather we're going to get here. Okay, so let's not go into the gear warning here. This is the best we can get. And I think that area to the right there is where we've got the best cloud clearance. Alright. So let's do some stall training now. We're going to start in clean configuration, so we actually go thrust idle now. The goal is to recover as soon as the stall warning light comes on, and to maintain our altitude while we're doing that. Now you can lose some altitude, but it shouldn't be more than 100 feet. Alright, here's the stall warning. So, push to unload, recover, smoothly apply thrust, and here we go. Basically maintained the 2000. Nice! Let's do the same thing in landing configuration now. So, gear down, flaps full. Again, try and maintain those 2000 feet. Let's just turn away from the clouds again. Don't want to go IMC accidentally. Alright, should be here momentarily. Let's see. Yeah, probably not gonna get much better than this. So this direction it'll be. I think this probably gives us the most clearance here. Alright, so maintaining 2000. Throttle idle. Now the same thing in landing configuration. Do not trim during an exercise like this. And here we go. Stall warning. Push to unload. Add thrust. Do not pull a secondary stall. And this is looking fantastic. Alright. So, as you can see, the airplane's flight dynamics, very gentle, very easy to recover from stalls. So, let's go ahead and retract that landing gear. Let's also retract those flaps. Let's try to keep the airspeed somewhere decent. So, manifold pressure 20 and RPMs 20. Like that. Alright, I like it. So let's go over here, flying a little bit to the west, just to get underneath the clouds, and then we can have a look at how to lean the aircraft. In the meantime, we will be heading back towards Mainz, so let's just program the GPS for that. I mean, we would probably find it without GPS, but just be safe here. Because after all, at the end of the day, super busy airspace around Frankfurt Airport, so better safe than sorry. Okay, so the altitude's looking good. Then let's go ahead and adjust ourselves to the GPS course, like that. You can also see all of that up here on the primary flight display, by the way. That's so nice. Down here you got your turn indicator, you got the deviation indicator from your course, and then obviously you have the heading and the track up here. So we know that we need a GPS track of 338 degrees. So if you just put the track line on 338 up here, that's it. Now we know that we are flying the correct track. Alright, so let's put the autopilot on again. So Alt Hold is engaged. And now, while we are flying back towards mines, let's focus on leaning the aircraft for a bit. There are a couple of tools that you can use to lean the plane. First of all, you do have the target fuel flow for your power settings located up here. So if you're flying at, for example, 55% cruise power, you know that you have to lean it within that range. However, in order to make it a bit more exact, we got our engine monitor installed in the aircraft as well. And this is what we want to be using right now, because using the engine monitor, you can basically lean the aircraft to any setting that you can possibly think of. So we press the lean find button down here, and now we slowly start reducing the mixture. Be sure to do that very, very slowly and gently, so that the computer has time to detect the peak in the EGT. Right, here we go. We can already see that cylinder number 2 is becoming the hottest cylinder over here. Alright, so let's keep leaning. Very slowly. And look at that, the autopilot tells us this wants a bit of trim down. Otherwise we are exceeding the authority. So just trim down a bit over here. Alright, then let's keep leaning. Let's keep leaning more, and yep, here's the peak. Alright, now we increase the mixture again until we get a difference from the ridge of peak setting of about 40 to 50 degrees. 50 is best. So let's just add a bit more mixture here again. You can also fly it exactly on the peak. Here we go, now it's getting a little bit colder again. We're looking for -50-ish, and then we got like the most economical power setting. Alright. So, something like that will have to do for today. We can see we're now using about 12 gallons an hour. So we are operating just at about 60% mixture over here. Alright then, we have already reached mines again. We are just overflying the field right now. So I suppose we are just going to turn off the autopilot and then get ourselves into that traffic pattern. So let's get that approach shot again. We are right now somewhere here in the north, in the bird protection area. You can clearly see why. So 1500 feet is the pattern altitude. Let's ensure the altitude bug is set, and it is. So 1500 feet, here we are, and then we'll just fly ourselves around the field and then into the right-hand downwind for runway 07. Let's set that heading bug to the runway heading. Here we go. 070 is set. Let's not climb away. Okay, so the field should be somewhere ahead of us. Yep, I think that's our field over there. That's the forest. Officially, you're not supposed to enter a traffic pattern like this. So what we are going to do is we will overfly the field in the middle and then join the right-hand pattern. Okay, so traffic pattern, as you can see, the downwind is just about at the end of the forested area, and the base turn is just past this city of Walkaround. Alright, let's reduce our power so that we get her back into pattern speed, and then let's quickly have a look into the approach checklist. Autopilot master off, fuel pump. Come on. Okay, there it is. It's on. Don't do this in the real world. Just move your head. It's easier. So, fuel selector is on the highest tanks. The fuel level is good. Mixture is rich. Prop, full forward. Carpet, let's just give it one stroke here. Then we'll turn downwind. Alright, carpet on, speed is coming down to 120 miles, then let's go gear down and flaps into the first notch, and that's the approach checklist complete. Okay, we're on a right-hand downwind now, there's our field, there is Walkaround. We could probably get a little bit closer to the field. So let's trim her out like that. Fantastic. 100 miles in the pattern is normally quite good. Alright, there's Walkaround. There's our runway. Okay, nice right-hand downwind. Then let's go ahead and turn into the right base. And flaps, I think it's 20. Let's also turn the carpet back off. This should have been more than enough to clear any possible icing that may have built up. Alright, and the pattern takes us exactly overhead the over here. Okay. Flaps full. And there's our runway. What I really like about those A2A aircraft is how they react to thrust changes. You could see when I just pulled my throttle off how the airplane really didn't want to fly anymore. Now look at that, I'm just adding a bit of throttle and it's immediately reacting to it. That's a really nice way to control your vertical path, and A2A is just doing that absolutely fantastically. Alright, idle. You can feel how it doesn't want to fly anymore. And then decrab. Touchdown. Alright. Flaps are going in. Let's trim it back neutral. Here we are. And touch and go. Power is set. So the last takeoff was with flaps. You could feel how the airplane started to float. This one is without it. And I could swear I felt a bit of floating. But anyway, positive climb, gear up. So 105 miles for the climb. Going through 400 AGL, set climb thrust, 2424. like that, and that. Alright, and remain over the forest, so we gotta start the right-hand turn here. Reaching 1500, level off. Should probably have started the turn a tiny bit earlier. That's the problem when suddenly you have those precise navigation charts available. As a YouTuber, you can no longer say like, no, I did everything exactly. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Alright, let's... That was probably a little bit too little RPMs. Here we go, 2020, quite the nice setting. And then we can turn to the right again. I guess this golf course is what we're not supposed to overfly. Which may be the reason for that turn out there. Anyway, doesn't matter. Alright, so here's downwind heading. There's our runway. Let's do one more approach, and this one is going to be without flaps. So we better get the airplane slow early, because we will be missing a lot of drag later on. And you can see how when I use a power setting where I just about do not enter the landing gear warning, we are basically not losing airspeed. If we do increase the RPMs, we get a bit more drag, and you can see how the speed starts coming back a bit nicer, but then again we are almost at the turn where we start the base already, and we still gotta lose a bit of that speed. Yeah, might just about have to go into the landing gear warning here. Alright, reaching 125, gear down. So, speed is slowly coming back, 100 miles is looking good. Let's start our descent. This one definitely got to be more shallow. The runway will be over there. Our clue for turning final is that piece of the city over here. So, turning final, let's maintain those 90 knots. And there's our runway. Showing 4 red, that is fine, we're not on an IFR approach. So the puppy is just guidance. Here we go, okay, the landing gear is down. Mixture is rich, prop is full forward, carpet is off. Okay, so this time she's probably going to float a little bit more. Alright, 90 knots, looking good. And thrust idle. See how she is descending when you pull the thrust. And decrap. Alright. So, trim back to neutral. Like that. Let's do one more. Then we got 3 takeoffs and landings, which is what you need to be allowed to carry passengers. So, power set. 85, rotate. Positive climb, tap the brakes, gear up. We're looking for 105 miles once again. Boy, I swear I want to say knots. Here we go. And through 1000 AGL, let's set climb thrust. And we can start the upwind turn. So 24 and 24. One minute to go. Let's slowly level off. Alright, and this time we'll just keep the turn. Nice rate 1 turn. Pretty much into the downwind. So, 15 inches and 2000 RPM. Okay, so nice downwind. There's the runway. It does seem to get a little bit bumpy right now. The turbulence seems to pick up a little bit, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Alright. Reducing power. RPM's maximum, that way we are actually losing some speed. Speed is coming back. Here we are, 125. So flaps 10, gear down. And then we can turn base and start the descent. Right, flaps 20. If this landing is good, it's going to be a full stop. Overall, I think we can really say that the airplane does fly very, very nicely. I could keep going with those traffic patterns for a very long time now, because they are huge fun to fly, but I do realize you guys do not want to watch me land and land and land and land. So let's make this the third and final one. Alright, flaps full. Alright, there's our runway. And here we go, right on the poppy. You don't have to use it VFR, but then again, 3 degrees is normally a good angle. So why not use it if you have it? Okay, idle. Flare, decrap, and touchdown. All right, I guess we can probably even take that exit here. And here we are. Well, my friends, what can I say? A2A has once again done A2A things. Flies beautifully, looks beautifully. I do really appreciate the new options, and I guess for the price of a couple coffees, this is a pretty nice addition to your FS2024 fleet. Let's just stop her over here momentarily so that we can do the after landing checklist. So, flaps up. Then strobes off, and that will go for all the other lights as well over there. Alright, fuel pump off. Mixture lean as required. We are going to lean her a bit, and trim neutral. Like this. Alright, after landing checklist complete, shutdown checklist will be next. We are taxiing to the same parking area where we came from, Vacated Bravo, right over here, and onto the main parking area. Alright, parking brake released, let's go. 1000 RPMs, which is the recommended idle RPM, really is sufficient to get your airplane moving at a very nice speed. So let's turn right over here, and whoa, that was a little agile turn. So right over here, and then we'll bring her all the way back to the parking area. Overall, a thoroughly enjoyable aircraft that A2A have once again delivered. I can really recommend their stuff for, well, I'm using it for over 10 years now, and they're just doing superb work on pretty much every aircraft that they work on. And this one is absolutely no exception to that rule. Okay, so let's go ahead and find a parking spot, probably right behind that Bonanza over there. Here we go. Okay. Let's get a couple of meters further forward. somewhere like this. Cool, parking brake is set, and parking or shutdown checklist please. Parking brake set, radios. Off, transponder off, avionic master off, autopilot master off. By the way, that pitot should have been off. Then master switch off. Okay, so throttle, idle, mixture, cutoff, magnetos off, control wheel secure, doors, windows are secured, tie downs are coming, and that's the shutdown checklist completed. Well then, we might have to refuel her for the next one, because we did use it down to like half. We did have 3/4 in there at first, so that gives you a rough idea. We flew it on pretty high power settings most of the time, but that gives you a rough idea of the fuel usage of the airplane. Overall, thoroughly enjoyable. I can really recommend trying it, especially if you already own the FS2020 version, but even if not, then the A2A Comanche is just a fantastic aircraft for a single engine experience. For now, let's go ahead and tie her up so that we can get her secured for the possible strong winds and everything that may be coming over the next couple of days. But you can be very sure that you will see me flying her again on the channel. For now, thank you very much for flying along. I do hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I absolutely had a blast at this, and with that, I thank you very much for watching, and I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one.